What if your body is not just reacting to life, but listening to your mind every single day? What if the thoughts you repeat, the emotions you live in, and the energy you carry are shaping your health, your identity, and your future more than you realize? That is the core of what Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches. His message is simple, but radical. You are not stuck with the body you have been conditioned into. You are not trapped by the personality that your past created. And you are not doomed to repeat the same emotional patterns forever. According to Dr. Joe, if you change your mind, you can begin to change your biology. If you change your energy, you can begin to change your life. That sounds big, but his work tries to explain it through neuroscience, stress biology, epigenetics, meditation, mental rehearsal, and the relationship between thought, emotion, and the body. This is not just about positive thinking. It is about learning how the body memorizes the past and how to stop living from that memory. Dr. Joe often starts with one powerful idea. Most people think they are thinking their thoughts, but a lot of the time, their thoughts are actually being driven by how they feel. And those feelings are often old: stress, fear, frustration, guilt, shame, resentment. The body gets so used to these emotional states that they become familiar. Then, familiar starts to feel normal. And once that happens, the body begins to live in the past, even when the mind says it wants a new future. That is where a lot of people get stuck. They say they want healing, but they keep rehearsing stress. They say they want change, but they wake up every day feeling like the same person. They want a new life while emotionally living in the old one. Dr. Joe calls this an addiction to emotion. Not because people want pain, but because the body gets chemically attached to familiar emotional states. Over time, the body starts craving the same mood, the same reaction, the same identity. And then the body begins to control the mind. That is when change becomes difficult, because now you're not just trying to think differently, you're trying to break a biological habit. This matters for healing because stress changes the chemistry of the body. When you live in survival mode, your system keeps signaling danger. And when the body is constantly preparing for danger, it has fewer resources available for growth, repair, and recovery. So, in Dr. Joe's view, healing starts when you stop teaching the body that it is still under threat. That is where mental rehearsal comes in. One of the most important ideas in his work is that the brain doesn't always know the difference between a real experience and one that is vividly and emotionally rehearsed. If you repeatedly imagine a new future with enough clarity and enough emotional involvement, you begin to build new neural circuits. You're training the brain to become familiar with a different version of yourself. This is powerful because your brain is always learning. Every thought is a signal. Every feeling is a chemical message. Every repeated state becomes a pattern. So when you mentally rehearse being calm instead of anxious, grateful instead of bitter, whole instead of broken, you're not just daydreaming, you're installing a new internal program. And according to epigenetics, the environment that influences your genes is not only the outside world, it is also the inner environment of the body. Your thoughts affect chemistry. Your emotions affect signaling. Your state affects expression. That means the body is constantly reading the mind. This is why Dr. Joe talks so much about feeling the future before it arrives. Because if your body is emotionally living in the future you want, instead of the past you fear, then your biology starts responding to a different signal. You become less predictable, less conditioned, less trapped in the identity your history built. And that opens the door to change. He also goes beyond the brain and talks about consciousness itself, about entering a state in meditation where you're no longer obsessed with your body, your problems, your environment, or time. A state where you become present enough to stop being the same person for a while. In his language, this is where you begin to connect with a larger field of intelligence. Some call it the quantum field, some call it universal intelligence, some call it consciousness. The label matters less than the experience. The point is this: when you stop being completely identified with your old story, you create space for something new. That space matters, because healing often doesn't begin when you force. It begins when you release the identity that keeps repeating the problem. Another major piece of Dr. Joe's teaching is heart and brain coherence. He says real transformation is not just about thinking new thoughts, it's also about creating elevated emotions that bring the body into order. Emotions like gratitude, love, compassion, inspiration, joy. Not fake positivity, real elevated emotion. Because when the heart and brain move into a more coherent state, the body shifts. Breathing changes, hormones change, signal patterns change, stress chemistry starts to quiet down. And that internal order creates better conditions for healing. This is important because many people try to think their way into a new life while emotionally staying the same. That usually doesn't work. A new future requires a new emotional baseline. You can't create a life of peace while rehearsing panic every day. You can't create healing while constantly signaling fear. You can't become a new person while staying loyal to the old chemistry. That's why mindfulness matters. That's why meditation matters. That's why attention matters. Because where you place your attention, you place your energy. And if your attention is always trapped in problems, deadlines, pain, memories, conflict, and survival, then your body keeps receiving the message that the threat is still here. But when you widen your awareness, when you breathe, when you stop reacting automatically, you interrupt the old pattern. And once the pattern is interrupted, change becomes possible. Dr. Joe also shares stories of people who experienced dramatic healing. People with serious conditions, people who had reached the edge of conventional hope, people who changed in ways that seem impossible until they happen. Now, whether someone fully agrees with every claim or not, the deeper point is still powerful. The human body may be far more responsive to consciousness than most people were taught, and the mind may be far more powerful in shaping health than people assume. But he's also clear about one thing: this is not passive. It takes practice. It takes repetition. It takes learning how to surrender the old identity without fully knowing who you'll be on the other side. That's uncomfortable, because most people would rather hold on to familiar pain than step into an unknown future, even when that future is better. So his message is not just heal, it's practice becoming someone new. Practice thinking differently. Practice feeling differently. Practice reacting differently. Practice remembering that your body is not your prison. And practice long enough that the new state becomes more familiar than the old one. In the end, Dr. Joe Dispenza's message is deeply empowering. You are not only the product of your past, you are also the author of what comes next. Your body can learn, your brain can rewire, your emotions can shift, your identity can evolve. And if you stop giving the same signals to the same future, your life can begin to move in a different direction. That doesn't mean healing is always instant. It doesn't mean change is easy. And it doesn't mean you ignore medicine or reality. It means you stop underestimating the role your inner world plays in shaping your outer life. So maybe the real question is not just, can the body heal? Maybe the deeper question is this:
Can you become greater than the emotions that memorized your past? Can you stop signaling the same fear every day? Can you rehearse a future so clearly and feel it so fully that your body begins to believe in it before it arrives? Because if you can, then maybe healing is not only about fixing what's broken. Maybe it's about becoming someone your old reality can no longer contain. And that is where real transformation begins. If this message spoke to you, take 1 minute today and ask yourself, what emotion have I been rehearsing so often that my body now thinks it's who I am? That question alone can change the direction of your life.